Yo, what is up guys, Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, WBO middleweight champion Janibek Alimkhanuly this past weekend defended his title by defeating Canadian Stephen Butler by a second round knockout. Butler was down, I believe, 3 times in round 2. He couldn't avoid the uppercuts of Janibek. You know, I'm sure leading up to this fight, Janibek had harder sparring, quite frankly. Stephen Butler was a very poor opponent, to say the least. Janibek Alimkhanuly, interesting one in my opinion. First and foremost, I will say, and I've said this in the past about Janibek, I see a very talented fighter. Skilled southpaw, hard puncher, really good counter puncher as well. He's got good punch technique, good timing, and you know, technically he is just very sound. Always maintains really good balance, good distance control, things of that nature. He's what you expect from an Eastern European or Central Asian fighter, of course, Janibek being from Kazakhstan. So in terms of skill, I do rate this guy extremely highly. And in fact, when you look at the middleweight division, I don't think there's a guy there who I would pick Janibek to lose to. We're talking about guys like Liam Smith, Jaime Munguia, Erislandy Lara, Jamal Charlo, etc. I would make Janibek a favourite in all of these fights. However, as a fight fan, I am concerned that we are no closer in getting these types of fights. And again, I appreciate that in the last sort of year or two, Janibek has been avoided. Of course, most notably, Demetrius Andrade blatantly ducked Janibek. At the time, Andrade was the WBO middleweight champion, Janibek was his Mando, and Andrade vacated the title. And I believe Janibek was then elevated to full champion. Not only did Andrade duck Janibek, but also Jaime Munguia, who's ducking everybody in the middleweight division. So there's no doubt Janibek is avoided. You know, certain guys, I guess, see him as high risk, low reward, even though he's got a title now which really sums up the state of boxing. However, despite that, you know, the whole boogeyman thing, you can't dine out on that reputation forever. If a fighter isn't getting the fight, he needs to really put himself out there. I always go back to Gennady Golovkin when he first went to America. In the beginning, he couldn't get any decent fights, more or less. So what he did was he just stayed active, even when he wasn't fighting the greatest of competition. He stayed active, fighting 3 or 4 times a year, and he was knocking these guys out in spectacular fashion. That only increased Golovkin's fanfare, his fan base, and eventually, although in the end it was too late, he did get the big fights. For me, when it comes to a guy like Janibek, there's no reason whatsoever that he's just had his first fight of the year midway through May. Given his position in the middleweight division and in boxing, nobody knows who this guy is. I'm talking about the casuals. This guy should be on TV 3 or 4 times a year right now. If he can't get the top opponents, then let him fight whoever he can get, and have him fight 3 or 4 times a year, keep on securing knockouts and go from there. Build that profile, build that highlight reel. But no, he's only just had his first fight of the year. Maybe he's been injured, maybe, I don't know. But regardless, I mean, it's not good for his profile, is it? So for me, Janibek should be back in August, his next fight. He had 2 rounds against Stephen Butler, who was useless. Again, not fit to be a sparring partner for a guy like Janibek as far as I'm concerned. So in my opinion, he should be back in August. You know, he should be back in August. Even if he can't get one of the elite names, you know. I agree, guys like Munguia, Charlo, etc. These guys should be queuing up to fight Janibek as a champion, right? But, you know, Janibek can't rely on guys calling his phone. He needs to go out there and really build his profile. Fight on a regular basis, score some knockouts, build that fan base, and make yourself a more attractive proposition for certain fighters. Another thing I'd like to say as well, Janibek, without doubt, has been ducked in the last 2 years or so, but he really needs to publicly spill the beans on the Carlos Adames situation, because Carlos Adames, of course, he is the WBC interim champion, I believe. You know, he's recently beat Derevyanchenko and the Mexican guy who Jamal Charlo struggled with. But Carlos Adames was one of the only guys, I think the only guy, in the middleweight division who was calling out Janibek. But Janibek, on social media, seemed to pour cold water on that fight, saying he only wants champions, and then he fights a guy like Stephen Butler. He needs to, you know, try to reach out to Carlos Adames. I think Adames is fighting Julian Williams soon. I think that's coming up in a couple of weeks or so. So if I'm Janibek, I'd have my eye on that fight and ultimately target the winner, especially if it's Carlos Adames, because I think Carlos Adames is one of those guys who the PBC would be willing to let fight on another network because he's not a big name. And it gets a mandatory out of the way for Charlo because Adames is Jamal Charlo's Mando. And who knows, maybe Carlos Adames was clout chasing the whole time. But you've got to put that to the test. Reach out, make an offer, and go from there, because I'm not saying Adames is like a future pound for pound great or anything like that, but he is one of the top contenders in the middleweight division. And I was very disappointed in how Janibek kind of showed no real interest in Adames, especially considering the position in which he's currently in. I think they need to re-explore that fight, or explore that fight, sorry. I think Adames would be a good opponent for Janibek, and certainly his best opponent to date as far as I'm concerned. But Janibek is a good fighter. I think he's talented. I like his style. I like the power. He's got a bit of personality as well, Janibek. He's learning English. I think he could build a cult fan base. I really do. But right now, for me, he's not helping himself. He needs to be fighting more regular. He needs to be keeping himself out there, and he needs to explore a potential fight with Carlos Adames. Again, who knows? Maybe Adames was clout chasing. Who knows, right? But it's worth at least throwing a bone and seeing whether Adames bites, whether he's serious. Because if he is serious, I quite like that fight. Adames versus Janibek. I think that's a good fight. I really do. Who knows? Maybe in a few months, the IBF title will have a holder. Somebody's going to be the IBF champion. Maybe Janibek could target whoever that is. I think that vacant title is being contested between Esquiva Falcao and Michael Zarafa, I want to say. If that fight happens, that's a fight for Janibek to target in the future. I don't know, man. I mean, I think he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's not many real good options at 160. Hence why I'm suggesting Carlos Adames. I think he is the best option available who may want to fight Janibek. Obviously, still call out Charlo, still call out Munguia, etc. But I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to see where Janibek's career is going right now, in my opinion. But again, I like him. I do like him. I like his talent. I think he's a good fighter who's probably not shown us his best yet because of the competition. But yeah, he needs to get a move on, man. He needs to be more active, like I said, and just keep on banging that drum, basically, you know? But it is what it is. He was impressive against Stephen Butler, but that's not really saying much. You can't read too much into it. He did what he needed to do, which is all he can do, really, right? But anyway, share your thoughts below. I know I've been rambling. Share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy. Peace.